A blonde girl named Adia crashes to the garden dirt in shock, crying out in pain as a grand castle looms in the background. Looming over her, a young man and a dark-haired girl named Layla share a sinister, mocking smile. Trembling on her hands and knees, Adia endures Layla's malicious taunts to Lord Shihab that the truth makes her sister look pitiful because she lacks both divine power and athletic ability. Covered in dirt and completely broken, Adia stares at the ground, wishing only to escape and go home. Suddenly, an unknown voice cuts through the tension, noting her presence. Stepping into the drifting petals, a handsome, dark-haired man extends his hand toward her. He offers her a warm, gentle smile, his eyes closing softly against the falling petals. Still on the ground, Adia looks up in stunned disbelief, letting out a small gasp. The mysterious man's presence radiates a quiet, commanding calm. Gently grasping Adia's hands, the dark-haired savior lifts her gaze in a dazzling display of radiant light. Blindsided by the sudden brilliance, Layla and Shihab shield their eyes, wondering in shock if the intense light is coming from the two of them. Peering through the glare, a stunned Shihab finally recognizes the true identity of the mysterious man. This world is the holy kingdom of Mia, a land where the dream-interpreting saint is worshipped as a divine figure. For generations, the kingdom has been terrorized by a dream demon that possesses and ultimately kills its victims. Currently, the dream-interpreting saint is the sole existence capable of exorcising this demon and breaking its deadly curses. Although this sacred hereditary magic traditionally belongs to the eldest daughter of the Sirios Count family, it has inexplicably bypassed Adia and manifested in the second daughter, Layla. The memory shifts abruptly with the sharp clatter of a window. A violent burst of magical energy violently strikes Adia, causing her to cry out as objects shatter around her. A voice feigns sudden surprise at the destructive outburst. Bearing a crescent moon crest on her hand, Layla offers a mocking apology, deceitfully claiming she simply lost control of her holy power due to exhaustion. Trembling and holding her bruised face, Adia can only stammer her sister's name in distress. Instead of comforting her, their mother coldly demands that Adia act like an older sister and forgive Layla's small mistakes. The mother then cruelly twists the knife, asking if Adia is simply jealous of her younger sister's superior abilities. Sweating and desperate, Adia pleads with her mother that the accusation is entirely untrue. Flashing back to another incident, Layla effortlessly wields her magical crest while Adia cowers helplessly. Channeling swirling holy energy, Layla's presence sneers that Adia is a failure who cannot even dispel a simple curse despite being the eldest daughter. The cruel reality is cemented by the fact that the Sirios family hasn't produced a powerful saintess in 100 years, making Adia's resentment pointless since Layla is destined for greatness. The crushing thought echoes that it is utterly pathetic for Adia to even compare herself to Layla. Enduring the emotional abuse, Adia winces as her mother abruptly announces that it is time for Lord Shihab to arrive. Turning her back, the mother orders Adia to clean up the shattered glass herself, scolding her that relying on Layla will not help her improve. Utterly defeated, Adia obediently agrees as she stands over the spilled liquid. Later, Lord Shihab looks down at Adia with clear disdain, harshly questioning her plain and dirty clothes. Adia stands silently in her simple dress, stripped of any aristocratic dignity. As Layla offers another fake apology for not giving her time to prepare, Shihab brutally rebukes Adia for failing to understand how a count's daughter should present herself. Standing completely alone outside the gazebo while Shihab and Layla sit comfortably together, Adia despairingly wonders when her life became such a nightmare. She watches Shihab al-Marapi, the handsome leader of the Holy Knights, knowing he is supposed to be her fiancé. As Shihab tenderly treats a minor scratch on Layla's arm and praises her hard work, Adia recalls that she and Shihab have been engaged since she was 13. Layla beams sweetly at Shihab's tender care, reveling in the affection she has stolen from her sister. The painful memory of a time when Adia eagerly greeted him warmly flashes through her mind. Yet now, Layla eagerly embraces Shihab from behind, completely usurping the engagement that the Marapi family had decided long before they were even born. Standing outside the gazebo, Adia realizes this engagement is no longer desired and only benefits the two families. She glares at Shihab, demanding he return the brooch he gave to Layla because it doesn't suit her sister. Shihab coldly refuses, explaining he cannot give away a family heirloom meant for his fiancée without his father's permission. Adia looks down in bitter realization, whispering a defeated question about his convenient excuse. Her eye flares with the crescent moon crest, agonizing over the cruel irony that she is the more suitable one for the role. Layla rudely tells Adia to go home, blaming her lingering curse while gleefully claiming she will host Lord Shihab from now on. Overwhelmed by the humiliation, Adia thinks about how much she hates this torment and just wants to escape. Sweating and panting heavily, she bows her head as the crushing weight of her reality sets in. In her despair, she desperately wonders if the boy from her dream will ever come to take her away from here. The scene shifts to 3 years ago, where a younger Adia sits alone in a surreal, watery landscape, wondering where she is. The dark sky stretches over the horizon as she realizes she has entered the world of a nightmare demon. She recalls that this demon-ruled dream world amplifies negative emotions, corrupts the heart with malice, and causes illness. Realizing she isn't the one possessed by the demon, she looks around in confusion at the strange, isolated realm. Jolting into action, the young Adia splashes urgently across the shallow, reflective water. She discovers a young, dark-haired boy collapsed in the water, recognizing him as a patient of the sleeping sickness. Dropping to her knees beside the unconscious boy, she anxiously leans in to ask if he is okay. Examining his face, she notices dark, creeping veins and realizes his illness has worsened significantly. Sweating with panic, she knows her saint's power is unstable, but she must act immediately or his life will be in danger. Clasping her hands together in a desperate prayer, she begs for her unstable magic to work. A dark, corrupting force begins to crawl up her arm as she pushes through the pain of sacrificing her own blood. Radiant energy bursts from her hands, fighting back the darkness to heal the boy. Coughing violently from the strain, Adia smiles in relief, thankful she was finally able to use her holy power. The dark-haired boy opens one eye, panting slightly as Adia gently asks him how he feels. Blinking in shock, the boy stares up at his unexpected savior in complete disbelief. Suddenly, danger approaches from behind, prompting a desperate warning to watch out. Throwing herself between the boy and a massive shadowy attack, Adia uses her radiant magic to shield them both. Staring in awe, the boy realizes with amazement that she is purifying the nightmare demon. The intense magical light washes over the dark realm, completely shattering the demonic presence. Exhausted but victorious, Adia stands defensively in front of the kneeling boy. Safe at last, the young boy looks up at Adia with a warm, grateful flush on his cheeks. Smiling brightly, he sincerely thanks her for saving his life. Caught off guard by his genuine gratitude, Adia's eyes widen as a blush creeps across her face. A magnificent aurora of light begins to shimmer and cascade across the dream world sky. Standing side by side, the boy admires the beautiful view while Adia looks up in quiet wonder. Realizing the dream is ending, Adia panics, knowing she must wake up and get out quickly or risk dying. Just as she begins to fade away, the boy urgently grabs her wrist and tells her to wait. Dropping to one knee in the glowing light, he gently kisses the back of her hand like a devoted knight. Adia gasps, her eyes sparkling with shock as the blinding light envelopes them both. A magical ring forms on her finger as the boy declares that they are now connected. Smiling tenderly, he promises that this is the magic of reunion and swears he will come looking for her when he wakes up. Fading from the dream world, the mysterious boy's voice echoes warmly, begging her to wait for him. Adia awakens back in her quiet, sunlit room, gently clutching her hand as the magical memory lingers. Tears immediately well up in her eyes as she presses her bare fingers against her cheek. A faint, vine-like scar circles her ring finger, serving as the only physical proof that her encounter was not just a dream. Tragically, ever since that fateful night, she has been completely unable to summon the saint's holy power. She sits utterly alone in her massive bed, swallowed by the crushing weight of her inadequacy. Burying her face in her arms, she weeps over the bitter reality that years have passed and the boy has likely forgotten her. She knows that confessing she wielded holy power in a dream would only invite cruel mockery from her peers. Yet, a desperate hope remains that if she could just spark that magic once more, she might finally escape this endless suffering. Above all else, her heart aches with a deep, burning desire to see that boy again. The melancholic memory shatters as Layla gleefully parades her new party dress before their mother, while Adia stands ignored in the background. Catching sight of Adia, their mother's warm smile instantly contorts into a glare of absolute disgust. Stepping intimidatingly close, the matriarch harshly demands to know why Adia is making such a miserable face right before her sister's birthday. With poisonous condescension, Her mother asks if Adia is acting out because she greedily wants a celebration for herself. The cruel woman viciously brands her a greedy daughter, furious that Adia would demand attention instead of celebrating the sister who compensates for her incompetence. Unleashing her full contempt, the mother declares Adia's nature rotten to the core, admitting she once hoped their noble bloodline alone would redeem her. Stepping in with false sweetness, Layla embraces their mother, soothing her anger while smugly validating the family's cruel decisions. Trembling and caught off guard by the cryptic remark, Adia weakly asks what they mean by that decision. With devastating finality, her mother coldly states that giving birth to her was a complete mistake. The brutal words strike like a physical blow, causing the breath to hitch painfully in Adia's throat. Shattered and weeping, Adia turns and flees down the hallway, unknowingly dropping a small object in her desperate escape. A heavy foot callously steps on the dropped object, crushing it against the floor with a sharp clink. Slender fingers reach down to retrieve the damaged, dark-gemmed brooch from the cold stone floor. At the extravagant birthday banquet, a voice smoothly compliments Layla's final choice of dress. Layla's face twists into a terrifying, demonic silhouette of sheer malice as she clutches the stolen brooch. Adia's eye widens in pure, unadulterated terror as the horrific reality of her sister's true nature sinks in. Flaunting the stolen heirloom pinned to her chest, Layla smugly taunts a flinching Adia that even the brooch prefers her. Forced to hide behind a doorway, Adia endures Layla's echoing, venomous whispers calling her utterly pitiful. The scene transitions to the grand hall, where an announcer loudly thanks the guests for gathering to celebrate the 15th birthday of the dream-interpreting saint. Standing proudly beside his golden child, their father publicly praises Layla for flawlessly fulfilling her divine duties despite her young age. Murmurs ripple through the crowd as confused nobles whisper about why Lord Shihab is standing with Layla instead of his actual fiancée. Watching from the shadows, Adia stares in stunned disbelief at the picture-perfect family standing under the spotlight with her betrothed. A cruel, triumphant smirk flashes across the father's face as he prepares to deliver another joyful announcement. Drawing Layla into an intimate embrace, Shihab confidently stands before the crowd as the patriarch links their names together. The devastating declaration rings out, officially announcing to the entire kingdom that Shihab and Layla are now engaged. The father smoothly justifies the betrayal to the murmuring crowd, citing Adia's complete lack of holy power as a liability to the prestigious Merapi family. Standing completely isolated, Adia listens as the nobles cruelly agree that discarding her for a better bloodline was simply the natural course of action. Bathed in the approving gazes of the aristocracy, Layla gazes up at Shihab with sickeningly sweet devotion. Twisting the knife further, Shihab proudly declares to the room that he was the one who initiated the broken engagement to claim Layla instead. Behind her innocent facade, Layla shoots her broken sister a chilling, victorious side glance. Adia drops to her knees in the hallway, completely devastated by the public humiliation. She recalls the agonizing moment when Shihab stood with Layla in the grand hall, breaking her heart in front of the entire aristocracy. Crushed by the betrayal, she realizes that this agonizing cycle of mistreatment is exactly what her family has done to her over and over again. Trembling with unshed tears, her wide eyes stare blankly as the weight of her sister's cruelty sets in. The memory of Shihab's harsh words echoes in her mind as he justifies his abandonment by contrasting Layla's early awakening at 12 with Adia's total lack of holy power even at 16. His voice continues to sneer, asking if she truly believes she is capable of anything at all after enduring such shame. Unable to fight back, Adia tightly clenches her fist against her dress in silent, helpless frustration. To twist the knife, Shihab arrogantly claims that discarding her is actually for her own good. Leaning in closely, he coldly calls her pitiful, cementing the fact that her entire family has completely abandoned her. The traumatic memory blurs in a dizzying swirl of sharp lines and overwhelming despair. Layla's mocking voice pierces the memory, maliciously asking if Adia wanted the fiancé position that badly. Feigning innocence, Layla complains that it was unfair for Adia to get the engagement just because she was born first. The younger sister brutally concludes her taunt, reminding Adia that she is utterly powerless to change her fate. A montage of shattered memories surrounds Adia, showing her the stolen brooch, her mother's rejection, and the happy couple that replaced her. A quiet gasp escapes her lips as the paralyzing shock begins to subside into profound grief. Desperate to validate her existence, she mentally pleads that she has worked tirelessly in both her saint training and her fiancé education. Hot tears streak down her face as she wonders why her own flesh and blood would say such unimaginably cruel things to her. Layla leans in close, sadistically asking if Adia knows what the kingdom's people are whispering about her. Looming over her broken sister, Layla drops the final, devastating title, calling her a completely useless saint. The malicious giggles of her sister echo in her ears, driving Adia further into her spiraling despair. Smiling viciously, Layla asks if she is happy, pointing out that Adia is entirely powerless but should consider herself lucky to have ever been called a saint. A single tear drops into the void, symbolizing the final shattering of her aristocratic hopes. The scene shifts back to the gazebo garden, where Adia once stood frozen as a silent spectator to her own replacement. Layla flirts shamelessly, laughing at one of Shihab's jokes while completely ignoring her sister's presence. Shihab chuckles and casually apologizes for being mean, cementing their sickeningly sweet dynamic. Layla playfully demands a date as an apology, which Shihab eagerly accepts without hesitation. Crushed by the display of affection she never received, Adia painfully concludes that a useless person like her shouldn't even dare to wish for love. Covering her face with her hands, a sudden, blinding glow begins to emanate from her ring finger. She stares in awe as the faint, vine-like scar on her hand erupts into brilliant, undeniable magical light. The mysterious boy's voice rings out clearly from her memory, promising that they will meet again. A profound sense of relief washes over Adia, and a gentle smile breaks through her heavy tears. Gripping her glowing hand tightly, she finds solace in the realization that this magical connection is the only thing she has left. Clinging to the memory of the kneeling boy, she desperately prays that becoming a true saint will finally make him notice her. A dark-haired figure sheds a single tear, foreshadowing the emotional weight of their destined reunion. Finding her resolve, Adia's glowing eye reflects her renewed determination, declaring that this hidden power is her only hope now. 3 years ago, a younger Layla violently throws her books, screaming in frustration that she won't study to become a saint. Adia desperately tries to reason with her sister, insisting that she must know the saint's teachings, but Layla throws a tantrum, crying that no matter how much she studies, she won't become a saint anyway. Layla storms out of the library in tears, ignoring Adia's desperate pleas to stop. Adia watches her sister run away, her face filled with deep sorrow as she asks why Layla won't listen to her. Later, Layla sits alone at a table, pouting as she hugs a stuffed animal and complains about not being allowed to eat first. She glares out the window, watching Adia practice her magic outside, her expression sour with resentment. Outside, Adia concentrates on her training, manipulating water droplets in the air under the watchful eye of their strict mother. The bold text emphasizes the word, inconsiderate, and sister, highlighting the growing resentment. Layla watches her sister with bitter envy, thinking that Adia is inconsiderate for training instead of thinking about her, while the narration explains that the eldest daughter of the Sirios family is destined to gain the saint's power at age 13. The narration notes that by the time Adia was 12, the power of the saint had already begun to manifest, as shown by her magical display. Layla stares out the window, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and jealous longing. Clutching her stuffed animal tighter, Layla stews in her jealousy, muttering that it's unfair that only her sister gets to become a saint. A dark realization crosses her mind, and she thinks to herself that if she can't have it, she will just take that power away from her sister. A mysterious, dark aura surrounds the stuffed animal in her arms. A sinister voice whispers, offering to lend her its power, leaving Layla bewildered as she realizes the voice is coming from the stuffed animal. The dark entity tells her that she only needs to touch its power with her hands, causing Layla to ask what it means in confusion. The entity promises that if she can touch it, she will become special. Adia suddenly bursts into the room, panting and asking if she made Layla wait too long, startling Layla, who is still processing the word special. Adia apologizes for being late, noticing her sister's shocked expression, while Layla stammers out a response, her heart pounding. Layla quickly recovers, complaining that she waited so long her legs went numb, and tells Adia to hurry up and sit down. Adia flinches, her face pale with an anxious expression. She looks down at the stuffed animal Layla is holding, an ominous feeling settling over her. Adia nervously confesses that she had a scary dream yesterday, prompting a startled Layla to ask what she means. Adia anxiously asks if Layla can show her the stuffed animal. The tension rises as Adia stares intensely at the toy, her eyes wide with fear. Adia warns Layla that there might be a dream demon inside the stuffed animal, calling it dangerous and begging her sister to lend it to her. Layla's eyes widen as she realizes her sister can predict things, wondering if the dream demon's words were actually true, while Adia desperately pleads with her. Adia lunges forward and grabs Layla's wrist, declaring her hatred for the situation. Layla forcefully rips her arm away from Adia's grasp, a cruel smirk appearing on her face. Adia falls back, looking up at her sister in tearful shock, whispering her name. Layla glares down with terrifying, empty eyes, fiercely declaring that the power is hers and she won't give it up. Driven by jealousy and the demon's influence, Layla vows to steal her sister's power. She tightly grips Adia's arm, a dark energy swirling around her hand. Adia's legs give out as she collapses onto the floor. Layla watches coldly as Adia falls to the ground in a daze. The crescent moon and star crest, the symbol of the saint's power, slowly fades from Adia's eye. Layla covers one eye, a demonic smile stretching across her face as she revels in the stolen power of the saint. Adia, confused and weakened, wonders if her power suddenly disappeared, while Layla mockingly asks if she got tired from practicing too much. Still focused on the danger, Adia asks again to see the stuffed toy. Layla flatly refuses, tightly hugging the dark, corrupted toy. Bursting into loud, fake tears, Layla immediately cries out for their mother just as someone throws open the door to ask what is wrong. Rushing to her mother's side, Layla falsely accuses her older sister of aggressively trying to take her stuffed toy. Desperate to defend herself, Adia frantically pleads that the accusation is entirely untrue. Forced into submission by her family's clear bias, a defeated Adia bows her head and reluctantly apologizes to her younger sister. Hidden safely behind their mother's back, Layla shoots Adia a wicked, triumphant smirk. From that day forward, Layla maintained a cheerful, polite facade while secretly continuing to drain away the saint's holy power. She ruthlessly falsified Adia's prophetic visions, shamelessly claiming the divine dreams as her own miracles. Basking in the stolen glory, Layla happily accepts the kingdom's eager praise for preventing a tragic accident using the visions she stole. Stripped of her divine connection, Adia watched helplessly as she continued to lose more and more of her intrinsic holy power. To complete the ultimate betrayal, Layla successfully maneuvered to steal Lord Shihab and definitively secure an engagement with him. Knowing the stolen power rightfully belonged to her sister, Layla realized she had to keep Adia trapped by her side forever to maintain the facade. With chilling possessiveness, Layla silently vowed never to let her sister go as the scene shifts back to the present within the Marapi Viscount household. Dressed in a plain uniform, Adia serves tea to a mocking Shihab, who cruelly asks if the established failure is now pretending to be a maid. Tears spilling down her cheeks, Adia looks toward her father in a silent, desperate plea for salvation. Instead of offering comfort, her father strikes her violently, completely ignoring her terrified pleas for mercy. The brutal, sudden impact sends Adia collapsing helplessly onto the cold floor. Looming over her, her father aggressively declares that the useless girl has no place in their home now that her engagement is officially broken. He harshly commands that she must at least be of some use by serving eternally as Layla's personal maid. Adia gasps in sheer disbelief at the cruel demotion, while Layla hides a highly satisfied giggle behind her hand. Completely trapped with no true home to return to, Adia realizes she has no choice but to endure her new life as her sister's servant. Watching her broken sister quietly leave the room, Layla offers a condescending sigh of fake pity. Sipping his drink, Shihab arrogantly accuses Adia of brewing his favorite tea just to win his favor after shamelessly following him to the Duke's household. Trembling under his harsh, judgmental gaze, Adia desperately insists that his cruel accusations are entirely false. Suddenly, Layla lunges forward with a dark, threatening glare, violently hurling a teacup right past Adia. The delicate porcelain shatters explosively against the ground, splashing hot liquid everywhere. Fixing her sister with a terrifying, hollow stare, Layla coldly brands Adia as utterly shameless. Shihab immediately comforts his fiancée, agreeing that it is deeply disgraceful for a mere maid to use such seductive looks on him. Wrapping his arms securely around Layla, Shihab kisses her forehead and loudly proclaims that she is the only one he truly loves. Secure in her stolen romantic triumph, Layla flashes a sinister, highly victorious smirk. Staring at the shattered glass, a deeply confused and hurt Adia wonders when she ever looked at him seductively. Changing her demeanor completely, Layla hands over a pristine envelope, mocking her desperate older sister with an exclusive invitation to a bride-seeking party. With a sickeningly sweet smile, Layla cheerfully announces that the grand suitor is none other than the third prince of the Alger Empire. Adia's breath catches sharply in her throat, her eyes widening in absolute terror at the mere mention of that empire. She knows instantly that they are referring to the infamous and highly terrifying Cursed Prince. Battle Ras Alger is the formidable third prince of the Alger Empire, an imposing figure known across the lands for possessing immense magical power. Tragic rumors claim that because of his extraordinary abilities, he was cursed by a vicious monster and forced into a deep, unending sleep. Dark, sprawling markings aggressively crawl up the slumbering prince's skin as the violent curse relentlessly ravages his body. Layla gleefully explains that this sudden bride-seeking party is nothing more than a twisted hunt for a human sacrifice. She notes that the Holy Kingdom eagerly accepts this great deal, entirely willing to offer a noble daughter to guarantee peace against the unopposable Alger Empire. Leaning intimately over her paralyzed sister's shoulder, Layla whispers the horrifying realization that Adia is the chosen sacrifice. Adia's eye trembles in silent, absolute terror as the devastating reality of her impending sacrifice sets in. Layla whispers poisonously into her sister's ear, asserting that if Adia is offered as a sacrifice, it will conveniently clear their family's name of her past disgrace. Gripping her hands together in sheer panic, Adia wonders what horrific fate awaits a girl completely devoid of divine power in such a monstrous country. She reflects that if her engagement hadn't been cruelly broken, she would never have been forced into this nightmare. Layla casually brushes off her sister's deep distress, nonchalantly dismissing her concerns. She suddenly pivots, cheerfully addressing Lord Shihab and pointing out that the cursed prince suffers from a terrible illness. Adia gasps, her hand flying to her chest in shock as she realizes where the conversation is heading. Laughing cruelly, Layla points mockingly at her older sister, offering to use her holy power to heal Adia's filthy illness. The scene cuts to a tense, close-up shot of a hand hovering dangerously over another, crackling with dark, oppressive energy. Forced to her knees by a violent burst of power, Adia cries out in fear and frantically denies that she is dirty. Shihab immediately takes Layla's side, sternly ordering Adia to apologize while Layla feigns innocence, claiming she was only trying to be kind. Acting like a victim, Layla leans heavily against Shihab's chest for comfort. She delivers a fake, tearful apology, whining that she is always unfairly made out to be the villain in these situations. Behind her facade of tears, Layla flashes a sinister, highly victorious smirk as her crescent moon crest gleams on her hand. Turning to Adia, who is still reeling from the sudden attack, Layla boldly declares that she will ensure Adia is not chosen as a bride. Feigning deep sibling concern, Layla strokes Adia's cheek with her crested hand, claiming she would be sad if her mean-spirited sister were killed by a monster, completely ignoring Adia's desperate plea for help. The menacing grip of Layla's hand forcefully tilts Adia's chin, demanding absolute submission. Adia cries out as Layla violently slaps her across the face with explosive force. Stunned and clutching her stinging cheek, Adia stares up in complete disbelief, stammering out a confused question about what Layla is doing. Looking down from her position of ultimate authority, Layla demands that Adia kneel and beg. With a chilling, psychotic smile, Layla mocks the idea of a prince devoting his heart to a lowly maid, sarcastically suggesting he must be a very kind person to stoop so low. Standing proudly beside the duke's heir, Layla brutally reminds Adia of her lowly status, ordering her to ask properly or forget about any help. Shihab immediately agrees with Layla, solidifying Adia's complete isolation and lack of support. Defeated and broken, Adia tightly clenches her fist against the floor, her body trembling with humiliation. Forced into total submission, Adia bows her head low and desperately begs Lady Layla for help while the engaged couple watches coldly. Adia realizes with crushing certainty that she must accept this terrible fate because she literally has no other place to belong. Satisfied with breaking her sister, Layla beams with a sickeningly sweet smile, promising to personally prepare a dress that suits her perfectly. At the bride-seeking party, noblewomen hide behind their fans, whispering nervously about whether anyone has ever actually seen the third prince of the Alger Empire. The dark rumors claim that the unseen prince ruthlessly cuts down and discards monsters exactly like a demon. The gossiping noblewomen continue to fan themselves, their faces hidden as they exchange terrified whispers about the Alger Empire. The atmosphere abruptly shifts as Shihab and Layla arrive, drawing immediate attention, while the women dismiss the event as a mere sacrifice rather than a true marriage. The women comment on the prince's highly ominous reputation, noting that he is rumored to look just like a savage beast. Shihab and Layla stand together under a shower of sparkling light, looking like the picture-perfect couple. The noblewomen openly swoon over the pair, lamenting that the terrifying prince could never compare to the beautiful Lord Shihab. The gossip suddenly shifts as the women spot Adia walking behind the couple, harshly criticizing her plain, completely unfitting dress. They quickly recognize her and loudly mock her as Adia, the famously talentless saint. The noblewomen sigh collectively, heavily judging Adia's very presence at such a grand event. Walking entirely alone, Adia's back is turned to the reader as she realizes the brutal truth that everyone genuinely wishes she were the sacrifice. Staring down at her simple shoes on the grass, she accepts that she has no place anywhere and that everyone believes the world would be much better if she just disappeared. With profound despair, she concludes that everyone loves only Layla and Shihab, completely erasing her own existence. Suddenly, the murmurs of the crowd are completely silenced as Prince Battle Ras Algar makes a breathtaking entrance, radiating an imposing, almost ethereal aura. The noblewomen gasp in pure awe, instantly abandoning their fear as they loudly declare that he is nothing like the terrifying rumors and is even more beautiful than Lord Shihab. Instantly changing their tune, the same women who were just horrified now eagerly volunteer to go to the Algar Empire as his bride. An older noblewoman watches the prince in a daze, completely mesmerized by his undeniable beauty. Prince Battle stands tall and unbothered, his cold, silent demeanor projecting a terrifying aura that naturally keeps people at bay. Standing far behind the swooning crowd, Adia stares at his broad back, unexpectedly feeling a deep sense of nostalgia. The royal announcer calls all the marriage candidates forward, while a completely overwhelmed Adia stumbles slightly under the pressure. Prince Battle's sharp gaze sweeps the garden, searching for someone specific among the desperate crowd. Just as Adia tries to blend in, another noblewoman deliberately trips her, causing her to fall forward with a sharp gasp. Adia crashes hard into the dirt with a loud cry as the other girls and Shihab watch without offering any help. Layla seizes the opportunity to lean closer to Shihab, smiling maliciously as they watch Adia's public humiliation. Covered in dirt and trembling, Adia breaks down completely, wishing desperately to just go home and escape this endless torture. Suddenly, a familiar voice cuts through her despair, gently noting that she was hiding here all along. A tall figure steps past the cruel crowd, walking purposefully toward the fallen girl. Standing over her with a gentle gaze, Prince Battle quietly declares that he has finally found her. Dropping to one knee in a stunning display of respect, the magnificent prince smiles warmly at a completely bewildered Adia. Adia stares back in absolute shock, wondering why this powerful, terrifying prince is looking at her with such incredibly kind eyes. Gently grasping her hands, a brilliant, magical light suddenly erupts from their connection, matching the glow of the invisible ring. Layla and Shihab shield their eyes from the blinding radiance, staring in absolute disbelief as the magical energy washes over the garden. Surrounded by the miraculous light, Adia finally recognizes the feeling. Prince Battle looks at her with deep affection, confessing that he has been searching for her all this time. The memory of the young boy clicks into place, and Adia realizes with a blushing face that this man is indeed the boy from her dream. The prince smiles tenderly, fulfilling the promise he made in the dream to go search for her when he woke up. Overwhelmed by the revelation, Adia covers her mouth as the prince confirms that their connection wasn't just a dream and declares that she is the one who saved him. Pulling her into a secure, protective embrace, the prince whispers that he has always wanted to see her again. Adia closes her eyes, finally finding the safe, loving arms she had been desperately yearning for all her life. A gloved hand confidently reaches for a small medicine bottle as a bespectacled retainer, Zell, watches closely from behind. Zell solemnly watches the prince, noting that the lingering headaches caused by the nightmare demon's curse do not heal easily. Swallowing the medicine, Prince Battle looks forward with calm resolve, acknowledging that he has finally made it this far. A brilliant, heartwarming memory of the smiling blonde girl from his dream flashes vividly through his mind. Standing on a high vantage point, Battle gazes down at the holy kingdom of Mia, recognizing it as a religiously independent nation on the frontier. The memory dramatically shifts back to 3 years ago, where a younger Battle suddenly gasps for air in his bed. Zell and a maid rush to the bedside as the prince awakens from his long slumber, deeply disoriented and wondering where he is. Gently steadying the confused boy, Zell explains that he had been trapped in a coma after being cursed by a dream demon. Before Zell can finish, Battle suddenly clutches his chest in agonizing pain as a sharp ache fiercely strikes his heart. Staring at his glowing hand, Battle realizes the magic of reunion connects him to the woman from his dream, forcing the caster to share her suffering. Realizing she is in danger, Battle violently leaps out of bed, declaring that he must go to her immediately. Ignoring Zell's desperate pleas to wait, the young prince sprints frantically down the grand palace hallway. He crashes headfirst into a tall, imposing figure, bringing his panicked rush to a sudden, painful halt. His father, the emperor, stares down sternly and strictly demands to know the meaning of this reckless behavior. Desperate and panting, Battle explains that the girl in his dream lifted his nightmare curse, so he must leave to go see her. The emperor coldly forbids him from leaving, insisting he cannot fully control his immense magical power despite Battle's fierce protests. Completely dismissing his son's pleas, the emperor strictly orders Zell to keep a close eye on the prince. Returning to the present, the dense, shadowy woods of the frontier quietly surround the royal entourage. Battle stands alone on a dirt path, staring intently into the dark, overgrown forest with a heavy sigh. A sudden, intense headache strikes him again, forcing him to clutch his head with a strained groan. Out of nowhere, a massive, shadowy monster viciously lunges toward him from the treeline. Zell instantly appears on a tree branch above, swiftly neutralizing the monster while scolding the prince for being careless. Landing smoothly on the ground, Zell lectures Battle about running off and how it negatively affects them when they have to continuously search for him. Handing him a pill, Zell insists that Battle must take his medicine properly to manage the painful aftereffects of the curse. As Battle swallows the medicine and calls his retainer annoying, Zell warns him to stay quiet and watch if he refuses to cooperate with training. Adjusting his glasses, Zell bluntly questions why the prince remains so obsessed with a girl he only saw in his dreams. Zell argues that the emperor would much rather Battle court a proper lady of status than chase a phantom who might not even exist. Zell stares intensely at the prince, expecting him to finally see reason and abandon his foolish quest. Without warning, Battle unleashes a massive, explosive blast of magical energy that tears right past Zell's head. As the dust settles around a completely stunned Zell, Battle smirks confidently and points out that his retainer is also being careless. Stepping confidently past the bewildered man, Battle turns his focus entirely back toward the distant kingdom. The prince reveals that his magical power is surging because the magic of reunion is reacting frequently, which shouldn't happen so quickly. Staring at a vision of Adia engulfed in dark magic, Battle notes how incredibly strange it is that someone capable of breaking a nightmare curse isn't highly valued. Cutting off Zell's protests, Battle firmly declares that he has to go to her immediately. A fierce, commanding light ignites within his slitted pupil as his raw power forcefully bubbles to the surface. A flock of birds scatters frantically into the sky, deeply terrified by the sudden eruption of his magical energy. Surrounded by a dark, crackling aura, Battle shoots a terrifying glare over his shoulder and warns Zell not to get in his way. The sheer, oppressive weight of the magic forces Zell to his knees, making him grunt in intense pain. Trembling against the overwhelming pressure, Zell realizes in absolute awe exactly what he is currently witnessing. Bowing to the immense force, Zell recognizes Battle as the absolute strongest magic wielder in the entire empire. In a shaded forest, a loyal retainer named Zell drops to one knee, humbly accepting his young lord's commands. Standing tall with an air of absolute confidence, a young Prince Battle smiles softly. Kneeling proudly before the slain corpse of a massive monster, Battle listens as the emperor praises his formidable achievement and offers him any reward. Sitting imposingly upon his throne, the emperor orders the young prince to state his deepest wish. Meeting his father's gaze without hesitation, Battle boldly asks if defeating the beast has finally proven his true power. The emperor issues a strict ultimatum, giving his son until his 18th birthday to find the mysterious girl from his dream before forcing him into an arranged marriage. Bound by his father's royal decree, the young prince reluctantly accepts the harsh condition. 3 agonizing years pass as the prince tirelessly searches for his destined savior. Standing on a high balcony with Zell, a much older Battle expresses his deep frustration that even the empire's vast authority couldn't secure swift entry into other nations. He bitterly notes that the Holy Land of Maya stubbornly rejected their empire's influence, realizing his father orchestrated the delays. The memory of his father's calculating smirk flashes in his mind, confirming that the emperor intentionally manipulated the closed borders. Clutching his throbbing hand, Battle feels the lingering pain of the curse mark and vows to find his savior quickly. Zell watches silently as Battle glares out over the landscape, affirming that this hostile country holds the answers he seeks. Adjusting his cravat, Zell solemnly announces that it is finally time to face the waiting crowd. A fierce, fiery aura erupts around Battle as he casts a determined look over his shoulder. As an anxious attendant bursts in to apologize for interrupting, Battle ignores the commotion and orders Zell to follow him out. Stepping into the light, Battle thinks to himself that if it weren't for the girl, he would have absolutely no interest in this kingdom. Hiding behind the foliage, a group of noble women desperately gossip about the prince, calling him a diseased devil. Overhearing their terrified whispers about rather dying than marrying him, Battle simply walks past their hiding spot. Dismissing the entire event as a massive waste of time, Battle sighs heavily while an enraged Zell mutters about the women's blatant disrespect. The imposing royal entourage completely ignores the trembling, judgmental country bumpkins as they stride through the halls. Battle's resolve hardens, knowing the horrific rumors of the Algar Empire are exactly why he must rescue his savior from this place immediately. A loud voice echoes through the grand garden, officially announcing the highly anticipated arrival of His Highness Betrayal. The noble women immediately panic, snapping their fans open to hide their terrified faces. Surveying the hypocritical crowd, Battle notes with deep disgust how their fearful eyes instantly change into greedy stares the moment they see his power. He grimaces in utter revulsion at the shallow aristocrats flocking to him exactly like parasitic dream demons. Suddenly, a sharp cry of pain rings out, briefly distracting Battle as he wonders if his savior is hiding elsewhere. Nearby, Adia sits completely broken and crying in the dirt while her peers look on with cruel indifference. The surrounding girls snicker maliciously, mocking the plain, useless saint for embarrassing herself at such a prestigious gathering. Stopping in his tracks, Battle turns his piercing gaze toward the commotion, deeply appalled that such blatant bullying is happening here. His eyes lock onto the fallen figure, a sudden flash of recognition hitting him like a physical blow. Staring in absolute awe, he immediately recognizes the pure light blue hair and the unforgettable, delicate face of the girl from his visions. The beautiful memory of a younger Adia smiling warmly and asking how he feels completely overlays the broken girl before him. Realizing there is absolutely no mistake, Battle steps forward as a highly confused Adia stammers out his royal title. The prince's heart races, confirming internally that this is the exact woman he was promised to. Dropping to the ground, Battle pulls a stunned Adia into a passionate embrace, revealing that he is the boy she saved and that he has always wanted to meet her. He presses her deeply against his chest, finally finding solace after years of desperate searching. Standing up and holding Adia securely in his arms, Battle boldly declares to the entire shocked garden that she is his chosen bride. A collective gasp of absolute disbelief ripples through the stunned aristocratic crowd. Utterly blindsided by the explosive announcement, Layla and Shihab jolt up from their table in a terrified panic. Staring in absolute disbelief, Layla mentally screams in horror as she realizes her sister is now the imperial prince's fiancée. Panic grips her heart as she realizes that Adia's new status will be higher than a marquis's wife, making it impossible to steal the saint's power. Ignoring Shihab's confused questions, an enraged Layla storms forward to confront the terrifying prince. Plastering a sickeningly sweet fake smile across her face, Layla approaches the prince and asks if there has been some sort of mistake. She viciously points at her older sister, loudly accusing the disgraceful woman of acting weak on purpose just to gain sympathy from men. Highlighting Adia's ragged state as proof of her unsuitability, Layla stubbornly declares that she will never hand her sister over. While a defeated Adia tries to apologize, Layla secretly vows that her sister must remain her personal slave for the rest of her life. Stepping up to support his fiancée, Shihab arrogantly orders Adia to go home, citing her filthy clothes as a massive disrespect to the prince. A terrifying, deadly glare flashes across Battle's face as he coldly commands Shihab not to touch her. Layla freezes in her tracks, her confident facade crumbling under the sheer, oppressive weight of the prince's sudden anger. Without a single physical gesture, a massive shockwave of dark magical energy violently explodes outward from the prince's body. The terrifying eruption of pure magic violently scatters the surrounding wildlife into the darkened sky. The snob and noble women shriek in terror as they are forcefully blown back by the immense, suffocating pressure. Struggling to stay on his feet, Shihab desperately shields Layla from the gale while gritting his teeth against the overwhelming force. Shielded safely within the prince's arms, Adia marvels at his incredible power as he demands to know if they caused her suffering. She realizes in absolute awe that his control is so precise he is exclusively crushing their enemies while leaving her completely unharmed. Seething with extreme jealousy, Layla mentally curses her sister while the prince repeats his deadly question to the trembling aristocrats. Completely losing her temper, Layla aggressively points her finger and screams that the powerless, rejected failure is unfit to be a royal bride. Standing tall against the prince's aura, the younger sister viciously brands Adia as nothing more than a completely useless saint. The cruel words strike deep, causing Adia to look down as she painfully accepts that she truly is powerless in the waking world. Tightening his protective grip around her shoulder, Battle calmly turns his piercing gaze back to the furious crowd and challenges their claim. Gently lifting Adia's hand to his lips, the prince publicly declares that this supposedly useless girl is the exact savior who cured his deadly sleeping sickness. The magical vine scar on her ring finger begins to glow brilliantly, serving as undeniable proof of their powerful, life-saving connection. Outraged by the undeniable evidence, Layla arrogantly calls the prince a fool who simply doesn't understand true magic. Completely ignoring Layla's desperate tantrums, Battle gazes lovingly at Adia and calls her a truly wonderful person. Dripping with nervous sweat, a panicked Shihab realizes he must quickly intervene before his family's crucial asset is taken away forever. Desperate to salvage the broken engagement, the cowardly knight opens his mouth to voice his loud objection. Before Shihab can utter a single word, Zell silently appears and firmly clamps a heavy hand down onto his shoulder. Glaring through his glasses with lethal intent, the imperial retainer asks the trembling knight if he still fails to understand his place. Paralyzed by the retainer's sheer killing intent, Shihab listens in horror as Zell condemns the entire Holy Kingdom for its rampant arrogance. Zell coldly reminds the rural nobles that they have absolutely no right to speak directly to the imperial prince. Tightening his crushing grip, the loyal servant delivers a chilling ultimatum, promising zero mercy if anyone dares to interfere again. Utterly defeated and humiliated, the so-called leader of the Holy Knights bows his head and clicks his tongue in silent surrender. Still struggling to process the sudden rescue, Adia gazes up at her handsome savior, wondering if his protective words are truly genuine. Bitter memories of endless mockery flood her mind, reminding her of the agonizing years she spent completely crushed under the title of a worthless failure. Breaking through her dark thoughts, Battle gently admits that while he doesn't know the full details of her painful past, his resolve remains absolute. Surrounded by a protective vortex of swirling magic, he firmly reminds her that she was strong enough to save his life. Tears of overwhelming relief well up in Adia's eyes as the prince vows to return the favor and save her from this waking nightmare. Offering a warm, breathtaking smile, he finally asks the girl he has sought for years to reveal her true name. Looking deep into her trembling eyes, he officially claims her not as a failure, but as his one and only saint. Tears streaming freely down her face, she proudly reclaims her stolen identity and introduces herself as the eldest daughter of the Sirios family. The prince pulls his destined bride into a tight, joyous embrace, absolutely thrilled to finally hold her in his arms. Adia lets out a startled squeak as the powerful prince suddenly sweeps her right off her feet. Holding his new fiancée securely in his arms, Prince Battle officially declares to the heavens that he is taking Lady Adia as his royal bride. Left entirely in the dust, a seething Layla and a trembling Shihab watch their ultimate prize slip away forever. Cradled against his broad chest, Adia gazes up at her prince in absolute awe as she finally escapes her miserable past. Prince Battle firmly reiterates his stunning vow, officially declaring once again that he shall take Lady Adia Sirios as his bride. Adia's eye trembles in profound disbelief, completely overwhelmed by the reality that this magnificent prince actually wants her. Looking up with a mixture of hope and hesitation, she nervously asks if he is truly serious about his incredible proposal. Unable to process the sudden shift in her miserable fate, she clutches her hands tightly and looks down at the dirt. Melting away her doubts, Battle leans in affectionately and smoothly nuzzles his face against hers. Wrapping his arms securely around her, the prince vows never to let her go again, causing a deep blush to spread across her face. Snapping back to reality, a heavily flustered Adia flails wildly and screams for him to back away because he is entirely too close. Staring shyly at her scuffed shoes, she humbly admits that no one has ever spoken such incredibly kind words to her before. Tears of profound joy stream down her face as she covers her mouth and openly confesses just how utterly happy she is. Gripping his hands tightly, she tearfully discards her self-doubt and boldly declares that she truly wants him. The romantic moment shatters instantly as Zell delivers a sharp chop to the prince's head, sternly ordering his master to restrain himself. Zell fiercely scolds the unbothered prince, brutally reminding him that they are currently standing in front of an entire aristocratic crowd. Realizing everyone is watching, Adia screams in sheer, absolute embarrassment and frantically covers her burning red face. She desperately attempts to shove the highly amused prince away, begging him to let her go while Zell glares at them both. Finally released from his grip, Adia stands alone for a moment, panting heavily as she tries to calm her racing heart. Without missing a beat, Battle smoothly embraces her from behind, softly explaining that touching her makes his cursed headache completely vanish. Adjusting his glasses, Zell solemnly speaks up to point out the crucial implication of this sudden, miraculous healing. Looking over his shoulder, Battle connects the dots and realizes that this incredibly soothing aura is the true power of a saint. Adia tilts her head in genuine confusion, letting out a small gasp as she struggles to understand their cryptic conversation. She flinches sharply as the heavy realization of what they are suggesting finally hits her. When she firmly denies having any holy power, Battle insists she simply has a depleted reserve that will fully recover with proper rest. He explains that by holding her, he instantly recognized she possesses a massive, extraordinary vessel capable of storing immense magical energy. Turning a lethal glare toward a sweating Layla, the prince accurately deduces that someone deliberately stole Adia's divine power. Adia gasps in absolute shock, her eyes widening as she repeats the horrifying word while Battle stands protectively by her side. Connecting the terrifying clues, she wonders who could have stolen it while recalling the unnatural, unprecedented speed of her sister's magical awakening. Igniting a fierce flame of magic on his fingertip, Battle announces they will use a technique called magic bestowal to definitively prove her true power. Adia and Zell simultaneously react in sheer shock, completely bewildered by his sudden proposal to use such an extreme method. Glancing back with a serious expression, Battle warns her that the spell carries heavy risks and asks if she is truly willing to proceed. Adia gulps nervously, clutching her dress as she steels her resolve to finally uncover the truth. Instead of showing fear, her eyes sparkle with pure, unadulterated awe as she calls the dangerous magical concept absolutely amazing. Both the prince and his strict retainer stare back in completely dumbfounded silence, utterly thrown off by her wildly enthusiastic reaction. Leaning in excitedly, Adia rambles that she had only read about magic bestowal as a theoretical concept and cannot believe someone can actually perform it. Smiling with deep fondness, Battle praises her incredible resilience, noting that she maintained her extensive magical studies even through her darkest days. Clasping her hands together in eager anticipation, Adia urges the prince to proceed quickly if he truly understands the spell. Suddenly, a highly panicked Layla screams for her sister to stop, frantically warning her not to attempt something so incredibly dangerous. Layla rushes forward to intervene, loudly claiming she has never even heard of such a terrifying, reckless technique. Gripping Adia's hands tightly, Layla puts on a flawless performance, acting deeply worried for her older sister's safety. Internally, Layla sweats with absolute terror, knowing that if the spell succeeds, everyone will instantly realize Adia is the true saint. Driven completely into a corner, Layla violently unleashes a massive storm of dark energy and aggressively screams that she is the only true saint. The explosive shockwave of corrupted, violent magic violently blasts Adia backward as Battle desperately attempts to shield her from the impact. Lurking in the shadows, the jealous noblewomen sneer that Adia is merely showing off her useless knowledge because true magic like that doesn't exist. Completely isolated in the garden, Adia nervously endures the surrounding whispers of her cruel peers. Playing the innocent victim, Layla clasps her hands together and claims she has always watched her sister struggle. Continuing her malicious performance, the younger sister dramatically laments that a talentless failure could never accomplish anything no matter how hard she tries. Crushed by the relentless emotional abuse, Adia bites her lip and fights back humiliated tears. Flashing back to her lonely past, Adia sits completely surrounded by towering stacks of books as she desperately studies in the Grand Library. Shadowy figures ruthlessly mock her dignified efforts, laughing that the amateur has already failed again. Driven into the mud, A defeated Adia kneels in a puddle while Layla and the other girls cruelly laugh at her misery. Even the older nobles join the torment, crossing their arms and whispering that the eldest daughter is an absolute embarrassment compared to her genius sister. Trembling with devastating grief, the isolated girl silently accepts the agonizing reality that everyone truly hates her. Snapping back to the present, Prince Battle silences the entire garden with a terrifying, commanding glare and orders them all to shut up. The malicious noblewomen and Layla flinch violently, utterly paralyzed by the prince's sudden, overwhelming killing intent. Turning his back on the terrified aristocrats, Battle gently instructs Adia to completely ignore the pathetic fools around them. Locking eyes with his destined bride, he softly asks her what she truly wants to do. Gripping his hand like a lifeline, Adia gazes up at her towering savior with tears of profound hope shimmering in her eyes. A warm, deeply affectionate smile graces the prince's face, making Adia realize he is the only person who actually listens to her. Dropping to one knee before his tearful bride, Battle offers a safe haven that absolutely refuses to deny her true feelings. Finding her courage at last, Adia loudly swallows her lingering fears. Clutching her collar with fierce determination, she tearfully begs the prince to let her perform the dangerous spell. Panting heavily from her emotional outburst, she stands resolute while the kneeling prince looks up at her with immense pride. Rising to his feet, Battle tenderly kisses her forehead and praises her brave decision. Zell watches in completely dumbfounded silence as his usually ruthless master smiles with unprecedented, gentle affection. The legendary magic bestowal is an incredibly advanced spell recorded exclusively in the deepest archives of the Argol Empire. Because the prince's immense power is fundamentally different from ordinary people, transferring it to a weak vessel carries unimaginable, deadly risks. Furthermore, the technique demands absolute compatibility between the two casters, making Zell wonder if Battle truly values this girl that much. Acknowledging her unwavering bravery, Battle smiles fondly as Adia excitedly declares her desire to witness new magic and finally wield holy power. Stepping closely behind her, the prince wraps his protective arms around her waist and instructs her to close her eyes. Leaning intimately against her ear, he whispers for her to take a deep breath and simply feel his presence. Enveloped in his secure embrace, Adia feels a hot, overwhelmingly powerful energy sinking deep into her very soul. From a distance, Layla and the jealous noblewomen watch the intimate ritual with growing, sickening dread. Sweating profusely, Layla's eyes widen in absolute terror as she finally recognizes the terrifying scale of the gathering magic. Gently guiding her hands forward, Battle aligns his massive magical flow with her delicate fingers. With absolute faith in his bride, the prince commands her to unleash her true power. An earth-shattering explosion of pure, radiant energy violently erupts from the garden floor. Caught in the center of the glorious storm, Adia confidently channels the massive surge of divine magic. A blinding, magnificent pillar of holy light completely obliterates the surrounding darkness and pierces the sky. The malicious noblewomen gaze up in absolute, slack-jawed awe as gentle, purifying sparkles rain down upon them. Completely mesmerized by the divine spectacle, Shihab blushes deeply as he witnesses the true majesty of the girl he discarded. Standing tall beside a still-shocked Zell, Prince Battle smirks with absolute, triumphant pride at his magnificent saint. The purified crowd marvels at how light their bodies feel, completely regretting their past cruelty while a devastated Layla realizes her stolen throne is officially destroyed. A stunned onlooker realizes that Adia didn't just accept Lord Battle's immense power, but effortlessly used it to purify the entire area. Staring at her glowing hands in awe, Adia wonders if she truly unleashed the magnificent power of a saint all on her own. Meanwhile, Layla suddenly clutches her chest and cries out as a sharp, agonizing pain strikes her body. Staring in horror at the fading crest on her hand, a panicking Layla realizes her stolen power is rapidly weakening. Pulling her close, Prince Battle tenderly kisses Adia's hand and praises her magnificent display of magic. Gazing deeply into her eyes, he notes that her true power is still restricted while gently acknowledging the pain she has silently endured. Offering her a permanent sanctuary, the prince urges her to rest by his side so she can fully reclaim her sacred abilities. Desperate to maintain her crumbling facade, Layla frantically calls out to her fiancé for support. Completely ignoring Layla's cries, Shihab stares at Adia with a deep, captivated blush spreading across his cheeks. Layla watches in sheer disbelief as Shihab dazedly wonders when Adia became such a breathtakingly radiant figure. Basking in the prince's affection, a genuinely happy smile finally graces Adia's beautiful face. Caught off guard by her radiant expression, Battle briefly stammers as he asks her to repeat her quiet words. Recovering his composure, the prince sincerely praises the sheer magnificence of her purification magic. Layla's eyes widen in absolute, unadulterated terror as she watches her sister receive the adoration she desperately craves. Driven to the brink of madness, Layla frantically realizes she must drag her sister back to their family immediately. Knowing her stolen magic will completely vanish if Adia leaves, the younger sister desperately concludes they must return to their parents to fix this disaster. Reaching out with false sweetness, Layla demands that her older sister immediately return home with her. Instantly stepping between them, Battle fiercely declares that he will never send his bride back to an abusive household. Layla's innocent mask shatters entirely, revealing a terrifying glare of pure, malicious rage. Quickly changing tactics, Layla feigns innocent shock while the surrounding nobles begin to violently murmur about the sudden allegations of abuse. Turning on the waterworks, Layla dramatically cries out that a divine saint like herself could never commit such atrocities. Trembling behind the prince, Adia sadly accepts that the aristocratic crowd will blindly believe Layla's lies just like they always do. Refusing to let the lies stand, Battle confidently lifts Adia's arm for the entire crowd to witness. Giving her a reassuring smile, the prince silently promises that he will handle the manipulative crowd. Blushing deeply under his protective gaze, Adia finds the courage to stand strong as long as her prince believes in her. Across the garden, dark, corrupted energy suddenly begins violently pouring out of Layla's hand crest. Gripping her wrist in sheer panic, Layla realizes her stolen emblem is rapidly fading into nothingness. The crowd's opinion completely shifts as nobles whisper that the family's cruel decision to turn their eldest daughter into a maid makes the abuse allegations entirely believable. The aristocrats quickly connect the dots, loudly questioning how any decent parent could approve of such a blatant attempt to disgrace their own daughter. Cornered by the sudden turning of the tide, Layla stares blankly as her carefully constructed reputation crumbles to ash. Desperate for a single ally, the disgraced fake saint frantically reaches out toward her fiancé. To her absolute horror, Shihab coldly turns his back on her and begins walking away. The cowardly knight strides quickly across the garden, completely abandoning the ruined girl he just claimed to love. Layla's hand hangs frozen in the air, her eyes wide with the devastating realization of her total abandonment. Scrambling forward, she desperately screams for Shihab to stop and explain where he is going. Sweating nervously, Shihab mentally concludes that he must flee to avoid drawing the dangerous ire of the Algar Empire. Prioritizing his own survival over his engagement, the knight practically runs away while a pathetic Layla struggles to chase after him. Stopping in her tracks, a hollow, shattered expression overtakes Layla's face as she loses absolutely everything. Ignoring the pathetic display, a curious noblewoman approaches the royal couple and asks how they managed to meet. From the background, a completely destroyed Layla snaps her head back with a terrifying, venomous glare of pure hatred. Clinging tightly to Shihab, Layla seethes with jealousy and vows she will never forgive her sister for taking away everything she worked so hard to obtain. Staring across a dark void, the wicked younger sister fiercely declares that Adia's divine power rightfully belongs to her. The scene shifts to the Grand Maya Theocratic Kingdom guest palace, where a blushing Adia walks alongside the towering Prince Battle. A pristine line of maids bows respectfully as Battle gently guides a completely awestruck Adia inside and welcomes her to her new home. Opening the double doors to a breathtakingly luxurious bedroom, Battle warmly invites her to use the space however she pleases. Adia gazes around the magnificent chamber with sparkling eyes, breathlessly marveling at how wonderful everything looks. Collapsing against the incredibly soft bed, she buries her face in the thick blankets and weeps with relief that she never has to return to her dark, abusive cell. Turning back with a bright, genuine smile, she profusely thanks the prince and admits this is the very first time she has ever seen such a beautiful room. Melting at her pure joy, Battle wraps his arms around her from behind in a tight, affectionate embrace and whispers that he is incredibly glad she likes it. As he holds her, the prince's expression darkens with furious realization, wondering what horrific treatment she must have endured for a noblewoman to be this grateful for a standard room. A cold, lethal shadow falls over his face as he silently summons his loyal retainer, Zell. Looking out over the grand estate, Battle issues a swift, undeniable command for Zell to investigate the Sirios family's abuse immediately. The scene opens on the grand and imposing estate of the Merapi market. A nervous maid cautiously addresses Layla, who seethes with unhinged rage over the prince taking a liking to her older sister. Crushing flowers in her fist, Layla glares back sharply as the servant announces a newly arrived message from Lord Shihab. Her expression darkening with furious disbelief, the fake saint demands to know exactly what the maid just said. Meanwhile, a tranquil atmosphere settles over the luxurious guest room within the Holy Kingdom's state guest house. Zell formally informs Lord Battle that a swift message has been dispatched to the Emperor to confirm the discovery of his bride. Stepping forward, the meticulous attendant introduces himself as a butler while Battle warmly urges Adia to rely on him for anything. Watching the couple closely, a calculating Zell silently resolves to evaluate whether this girl is truly worthy of the completely smitten prince. Unaware of his intense scrutiny, Adia offers a graceful, radiant smile and politely introduces herself to the retainer. Pleasantly surprised by her refined aristocratic charm despite her horrific past, Zell respectfully excuses himself to announce that her bath is ready. Adia turns in quiet awe as a cheerful maid opens the grand wooden doors to the bathing chambers. Guiding her inside, the kind servant warmly urges the exhausted girl to take her time and fully relax. Adia quietly follows the maid down the pristine, sunlit corridors of the guest palace. Glancing at the elegant uniform, she quickly realizes that these servants do not belong to the local royal palace staff. A sudden spike of anxiety grips her heart as she nervously wonders if these maids are secret followers of her cruel sister. Dark memories flood her mind of abusive palace maids mercilessly mocking her as a completely useless burden. Shaking off the traumatic flashback, Adia flinches slightly as the smiling maid formally gestures toward the dressing room. A breathtaking array of luxury awaits her as the servant happily reveals that Lord Battle ordered them to let her choose anything she desires. The maid respectfully assures her that while these are merely everyday clothes, proper formal outfits will be custom-made for her soon. Completely overwhelmed by the lavish display of 10 different outfits, a panicking Adia frantically tries to refuse the generous gift. The maid firmly insists she accept them, internally puzzled by the young noblewoman's deep hesitation over such standard luxuries. Gently urging her forward, the servant explains that Lord Battle personally arranged every single detail specifically with her in mind. She expertly adds that the prince never goes back on his word and begs the girl to accept the gifts as a personal favor to the staff. Defeated by their genuine kindness, Adia finally softens her stance and politely agrees to accept the beautiful clothes. Now dressed in a comfortable robe, Adia blushes as the maid kneels down and asks to examine the injuries from her earlier fall. Slowly parting her robe, the humiliated girl reveals the painful, bruised scrapes completely covering her delicate knees. Producing a magical scar-fading ointment, the maid silently confirms the horrific abuse rumors while Adia nervously apologizes for her dirty legs. Gently applying the soothing balm, the servant warmly reassures her that diligent use will heal her injuries perfectly. Overwhelmed by the unprecedented tender care, Adia touches her face in sheer, breathless disbelief. Her eyes sparkle with pure, innocent wonder as she marvels at the immediate, amazing effects of the magical medicine. Thrilled by the advanced imperial magic, she eagerly leans in and begs the smiling maid to tell her more about the empire. Bowing respectfully, the servant excuses herself and urges the future princess to simply relax and make herself at home. Left entirely alone in the quiet luxury, Adia tightly clasps her hands together as the heavy doors close behind the staff. Sinking into the plush bedding, she wonders if the deep emotional wounds in her heart will eventually fade alongside her physical scars. Later, she steps out into the vibrant palace garden and approaches the towering figure of her royal savior. Blushing furiously, she shyly thanks Prince Battle for giving her the opportunity to wear such incredibly beautiful clothes. Battle freezes in absolute shock, causing a panicked Adia to frantically apologize and assume the dress doesn't suit her. A deep crimson flush spreads across the prince's face as he gently corrects her, confessing that he was simply captivated by her breathtaking beauty. Hearing his utterly sincere praise, Adia's face erupts in a massive blush as she bashfully accepts the compliment. The intensely romantic atmosphere is abruptly shattered as a thoroughly unamused Zell loudly clears his throat to interrupt them. Smiling with breathtaking warmth, Prince Battle leans in and gently asks Adia to simply call him by his name. He steps closer to the bewildered girl, pointing out that he already addresses her casually without any formal titles. Pushing past her aristocratic boundaries, Battle asks if dropping the formalities is okay because he truly hates being treated like a stranger. Overwhelmed by his closing distance, Adia clutches her collar and lets out a frantic, highly flustered squeak. Mustering her courage, she nervously stammers his name, causing a radiant, triumphant smile to instantly erupt across the prince's face. Still blushing furiously, the young saint softly whispers her thanks to her royal savior. The imposing prince stands tall, his heavy dark cape shifting slightly in the quiet room. Suddenly, Battle stumbles backward with a sharp gasp, collapsing heavily onto the plush sofa as a severe headache strikes. Panicking, Adia immediately rushes to his side while the exhausted prince leans his head back against the cushions. Sweating and wincing in pain, Battle confesses that his lingering curse vanishes when he touches her, weakly asking if he can rest for a moment. Looking down at him with deep concern, Adia realizes he must have been suffering from the nightmare demon's agonizing aftereffects during the entire party. Peering closely at his resting face, she notices just how terrifyingly pale and strained his complexion truly is. Her heart aches as she reflects that despite his immense physical pain, Battle remained incredibly gentle and protective of her. She remembers the absolute kindness of his staff, realizing they went out of their way to ensure she never felt inconvenienced. Deeply moved by their warmth, the young saint earnestly wonders if there is something she can do to repay everyone's kindness. Determined to bring him comfort, she reaches out with trembling hands toward the suffering prince. With utmost care, Adia gently places her hand against his forehead to soothe his agonizing headache. The moment her skin makes contact, a surge of purifying magical sparks dances through the air, instantly melting the tension from Battle's body. A deeply peaceful smile graces the prince's face as he breathes a sigh of relief, confessing that being by her side truly puts his heart at ease. Sitting quietly beside him, Adia patiently holds her hands together while the powerful royal finally finds a moment of rest. A soft, affectionate smile brightens her face as she notices the healthy color slowly returning to his previously pale cheeks. The quiet moment is gracefully interrupted by Zell, who steps into the room and offers his deepest apologies. Gazing at his deeply traumatized master, the loyal retainer asks Adia if she would kindly allow the severely insomniac prince to rest a little longer. Adia warmly agrees without hesitation, perfectly understanding that his horrific past naturally made him terrified of falling asleep. Gently stroking his dark hair, she recalls the agonizing nightmare realm where a dream demon nearly consumed his soul. Looking down at his finally peaceful expression, the young saint softly wishes him sweet dreams. Witnessing her genuine devotion, Zell smiles warmly as the faint, glittering light of her holy power fills the serene room. A gentle breeze catches Adia's hair as she stares out into the beautiful, sunlit sky. Basking in the unprecedented tranquility, she silently prays that these peaceful days will continue once they arrive in the Empire. Sometime later, a fully refreshed Battle sits commandingly at his desk, smirking with satisfaction as he orders Zell to deliver his investigation report. Adjusting his glasses, Zell grimly reports that the maids discovered extensive old scars covering Adia's legs beneath her torn dress. He further reveals that the traumatized girl was initially terrified of the guest house servants, viewing them with extreme caution. The scene flashes back to the dressing room, where a maid's simple approach causes Adia to flinch violently in sheer panic. Trembling slightly, a deeply defensive Adia stammers a quick denial to brush off the servant's concern. Completely conditioned by years of abuse, she nervously asks for soap, offering to wash her own clothes to ensure they dry by morning. Zell concludes his report with lethal precision, explaining that Adia deliberately chose simple clothes and expected to perform the grueling chores of a lowly servant. A terrifying, murderous aura instantly explodes from Battle as he grinds his teeth, his face contorting into an expression of pure, unadulterated fury. Radiating lethal intent, the enraged prince silently vows that the evil Count Sirios must be entirely eradicated. Meanwhile, back at the Sirios estate, the sharp clatter of silverware echoes as an emotionless Layla sits at the grand dining table. Completely oblivious to the apocalyptic wrath heading their way, the foolish parents cheerfully welcome their daughter back and casually gossip about Adia's unexpected royal engagement. Sitting at the grand dining table, Layla's father cheerfully declares that he must send his thanks to the Marquis of Merapi. Chewing on her meal with intense irritation, Layla mentally curses Lord Shihab for conveniently casting her aside and wonders why she should be thankful. A sharp clatter rings out as a silver knife suddenly slips and crashes onto the floor. Trembling slightly, the mother instinctively orders an absent Adia to pick up the dropped silverware. Gripping another knife tightly, a heavily sweating Layla mutters to herself that she no longer has an older sister to boss around. A sharp phantom pain strikes Layla, causing her to wince as the stolen magic within her violently destabilizes. Completely losing her grip on reality, Layla violently slams her fist onto the table and screams at an invisible presence. Hallucinating wildly, she cowers and apologizes to empty air, desperately screaming that her sister would never do something so cruel. Twisted whispers echo in her mind, tauntingly asking if she feels lonely now that her abused sister has suddenly disappeared. Fighting back the maddening voices, Layla clutches her head and arrogantly reminds herself that a future crown princess must endure unpleasant things. She stares down in absolute dread as the stolen crescent moon crest on her hand continues to dangerously fade. Realizing her divine power is almost completely depleted, she notes that the dream demon's mind-altering influence only works temporarily. Watching her foolishly oblivious parents, she realizes she lacks the magical reserves to forcibly brainwash them into doing her bidding anymore. Regretting the massive amount of power she wasted earlier, she concludes that she must manipulate her parents normally to bring her sister back. Seeding her deceit, Layla softly murmurs that the Algar Empire is rumored to be an incredibly terrifying place. Feigning deep sibling affection, she clasps her hands together and claims to be deathly worried about her sister being taken to such a cruel nation. Hooked by her act, her father gasps in sudden realization and immediately voices his agreement. Hiding a malicious smirk, Layla smoothly suggests they petition the king to return Adia because a mere count's daughter is an unfit royal match. A sinister smile completely overtakes her face as her easily manipulated parents eagerly take the bait. Blinded by greed, her parents happily imagine using the situation to extort a marquee title from the king. Layla glares with pure, unadulterated contempt at her utterly pathetic and greedy family. Masking her disgust, she abruptly stands up and cheerfully urges them to petition His Majesty right away. Bitterly resenting her current situation, she reminds herself that she should have been the one ascending to the royal palace. A dark, demonic shadow looms behind her as she silently vows to resolve everything the moment she drags Adia back to this house. Her absolute priority solidifies into making sure her older sister never becomes the prince's consort. The shadowy nightmare demon wraps around her shoulders, whispering corrupting validations directly into her ear. A terrifying, psychotic grin stretches across Layla's face as she fully embraces her wicked intentions. Enveloped by the dark entity, the fake saint completely surrenders to the twisted, demonic influence. Clapping her hands together with fake innocent joy, Layla abruptly suggests they host a grand farewell party for her sister. She smoothly manipulates her parents, arguing that inviting Adia home to collect her belongings will allow them to directly petition the prince. Continuing her flawless performance, she claims a farewell party will perfectly clear up the nasty public rumors about their family mistreating Adia. Nodding along to her brilliant scheme, her parents readily agreed to formally request a meeting with Adia the very next day. Gripping her fading crest tightly, Layla silently swears she will never allow her sister to achieve royal happiness. Driven by pure, possessive madness, she vehemently declares that her sister's divine power rightfully belongs exclusively to her. Glaring into the void, the corrupted girl vows she will never hand her sister over to anyone else. Meanwhile, miles away, a melancholic Adia gazes out a rain-streaked window, completely unaware of the sinister plot forming against her. Through the heavy, pouring rain, a horse-drawn carriage steadily approaches the Grand Palace. Peering through the rain-streaked window, Adia gasps in sudden shock as she recognizes the approaching vehicle. Placing her hand against the cold glass, she nervously murmurs that the carriage belongs to her family's estate. Sensing her rising anxiety, Prince Battle steps up from behind and wraps her in a warm, protective embrace. Standing together before the tall window, the royal couple silently observes the arrival of their highly uninvited guests. Bursting into the grand hall, Adia's enraged father immediately demands to know where his daughter is hiding. Arrogantly claiming authority as the crown prince's parents, the couple aggressively challenges the staff until a calm Zell steps forward to reprimand their unannounced intrusion. As Adia and Battle appear at the top of the grand staircase, her father fiercely glares up and demands an explanation for her behavior. Feigning deep paternal concern, the count deceitfully claims he was worried sick when she was taken to the detached palace instead of returning home. Stepping protectively in front of his bride, Prince Battle coldly declares that he personally arranged her stay and demands to know who fed them this information. Instantly bowing in submission to the prince, the parents falsely apologize for their daughter's supposed selfishness and insist they must take her home immediately. Glaring down at the pathetic display, Battle internally sighs with deep irritation, realizing these fools simply refuse to listen to reason. Unleashing his lethal aura, the prince brutally condemns them, officially branding them as the exact type of despicable parents who would mercilessly abuse their own child. As the parents stammer in panicked disbelief, Battle coldly calls them imposters, stating their disgraceful lack of manners proves they are entirely unfit to be Adia's family. With a swift, commanding gesture, the prince issues a definitive and absolute order. Instantly executing the command, Zell and the royal guards forcefully grab the struggling nobles to throw them out into the rain. Desperately thrashing against the guards, the disgraced count screams about his noble status and frantically pleads that everything is just a massive misunderstanding. Looking up at the staircase, the mother desperately changes tactics and begs for one final moment to say goodbye to her supposedly precious daughter. The prince ruthlessly mocks their hypocritical claim of love, completely shutting down their frantic denials of the horrific abuse. Weeping pathetic tears, the mother attempts to justify their cruelty by claiming their strict guidance was entirely necessary to forge Adia into a proper saint. A dark memory instantly flashes through Adia's mind, recalling the devastating moment her mother cruelly declared that giving birth to her was a complete mistake. The traumatic memories continue to pour in, showing her parents standing in unified disgust as they relentlessly brand her a pathetic, shameful disgrace. The brutal echoes of her demotion ring out, reminding her of the day they stripped her of all dignity and forced her to serve as Layla's lowly maid. Her father's vicious roar shatters the flashback, ruthlessly cementing the fact that she was a completely useless girl with no place in their home. Clutching her trembling hands against her chest, a heartbroken Adia questions how such relentless torment could ever be disguised as parental love. Weeping at the bottom of the stairs, the mother delivers a sickeningly sweet apology, desperately claiming they simply expected too much because they love her. Pushing her desperate manipulation to the limit, the mother begs Adia to return home just once so they can properly celebrate as a family before she leaves forever. Lowering her gaze in quiet resignation, Adia finally breaks the heavy silence and softly accepts their request. Stepping slightly forward, the young saint firmly declares to the stunned crowd that she will return to the Sirios estate one last time. Caught entirely off guard by her sudden decision, Prince Battle stares at his bride with deep, silent concern. Refusing to let her face her abusers alone, the protective prince firmly places a hand on her shoulder and insists on accompanying her. Sweating profusely, the calculating count realizes Battle's presence ruins their kidnapping plot and frantically brainstorms a way to isolate his daughter. Using his slickest aristocratic charm, the father smooth talks the prince, arguing their humble estate is unfit for royalty and begging for a private, family-only farewell. An illusion of a warm, smiling family flashes before Adia's eyes, highlighting her deep, lingering desperation to finally experience true parental love. The bittersweet vision of a perfect family walking hand in hand completely consumes her vulnerable heart. Clinging to a fragile sliver of hope, she mentally rationalizes that this farewell party is her absolute last chance to truly reconcile with her parents. Ashamed of her broken familial bonds, she bows her head and gently begs the prince to let her face this final trial completely alone. A quiet, undeniable resolve hardens within her beautiful eyes as she prepares to sever her past once and for all. Staring down at her determined expression, the towering prince visibly hesitates, completely torn between his protective instincts and her earnest plea. Reluctantly surrendering to his bride's wishes, Battle closes his eyes and softly grants her permission to go. Prince Battle watches in silent, heavy concern as his newly found bride prepares to face her abusers. Respecting his master's unspoken command, a sharp-eyed Zell offers a crisp nod before setting their plans into motion. Back at the Sirios estate, Adia's parents greet her with sickeningly warm smiles, making the desperate girl foolishly hope she can finally believe in her family again. Whispering nobles surround the extravagant farewell party, gossiping that the lavish display proves the horrific abuse rumors must be completely false. Watching from the shadows, Zell's glasses glint as he expertly scrutinizes the family's highly suspicious behavior. Standing nervously before the massive crowd, Adia questions why a supposed private family gathering turned into a massive spectacle. Her mother smoothly brushes off the concern, deceitfully claiming that so many people simply wanted to bid her a grand farewell. Scanning the opulent hall, Adia tenses as she spots her former fiancé, Lord Shihab, mingling among the aristocratic guests. Looking around the crowded room in confusion, she quietly asks her mother about Layla's suspicious absence. Maintaining her flawless facade, the mother offers a dismissive smile and smoothly feigns complete ignorance regarding her youngest daughter's whereabouts. The deeply uncomfortable saint stands rigidly between her parents, feeling entirely out of place in the extravagant hall. Forcefully pushing her toward the waiting crowd, her father loudly declares that she is the true guest of honor and commands her to greet everyone. The heavy, ornate doors of the grand hall slam shut, ominously trapping the young bride inside the suffocating social event. Standing proudly at the center of the room, her father forcefully presents Adia to the cheering crowd as the imperial prince's future wife. Panicking under the intense spotlight, Adia frantically begs her father to stop because nothing has been officially decided yet. Her father ruthlessly silences her protests, arrogantly asserting that the prince's obvious infatuation makes the royal marriage an absolute certainty. The mother quickly scolds her daughter to stop acting embarrassingly and demands she carry herself with the dignity befitting a princess consort. Adia flinches violently, the heavy weight of her family's crushing expectations instantly paralyzing her. The calculating parents loom over their trembling daughter, fully prepared to exploit her sudden rise in status. Staring down at the polished floor, the young saint shrinks back as her family tightens their manipulative grip. Leaning in with a menacing whisper, her father brutally commands the future princess to suppress any disgraceful abuse rumors. Turning back to the fawning crowd, the parents shamelessly boast that their strict, loving discipline is exactly what shaped Adia into an exceptional saint. The mother covers her mouth with a haughty laugh, basking in the glorious aristocratic praise showering their newly secured legacy. To complete the sickening charade, the parents publicly declare they prepared all of their daughter's absolute favorite dishes as a final act of parental love. Looking at the lavish feast, Adia realizes with crushing clarity that the extravagant chicken and cake are actually Layla's favorites. A profound wave of sorrow washes over her as she accepts that her parents never even bothered to remember what she actually likes. Unable to stomach the fake affection, she quietly pleads with them to stop calling her the princess consort. Brushing off her distress, her parents falsely assure her that they are still a loving family and that she will always be their precious daughter. The painful memory of a younger Layla eagerly devouring those exact dishes flashes through Adia's mind, cementing her total isolation. Dropping the loving facade, her father coldly notes that a mere count's household is an unsuitable background and casually asks for a massive favor. Revealing their true, greedy motives, the parents demand that she order Prince Battle to elevate their family to the prestigious rank of Marquis. Adia stares back in absolute disbelief, utterly stunned that they would try to exploit the prince's affection for political gain. She immediately refuses the outrageous demand, arguing that interfering in the Holy Kingdom's internal affairs is completely impossible. Her father arrogantly insists this is her perfect chance to prove her worth, claiming their king could never refuse a direct order from the Algar Empire. Trembling with rising panic and disgust, Adia clutches her collar as the suffocating reality of her family's greed sets in. Attempting to manipulate her fears, her parents deceitfully claim the elevated status is entirely necessary to protect her from suffering in the empire. They continuously twist the knife, arguing that since they cannot be there to protect her in that terrifying place, a higher noble rank is her only shield. A devastating realization completely shatters Adia's fragile hopes, finally opening her eyes to the undeniable truth. Staring blankly ahead, the broken girl accepts that her parents never worried about her and only ever wanted to use her to gain supreme power. Biting her trembling lip, she fights back a flood of bitter tears as the final illusion of her family's love is brutally destroyed. Unable to endure the suffocating atmosphere, Adia quietly excuses herself from the dining table and retreats to her room. Remaining at the table, her mother casually chews her food and complains that Adia's weak-willed nature makes her unfit to be a prince's wife. Lurking just out of sight, Layla flashes a wicked smirk and wholeheartedly agrees with her mother's cruel assessment. Leaning heavily against the closed door of her room, a devastated Adia clutches her chest as the heavy weight of her family's betrayal sinks in. Sliding down the door to the cold floor, she buries her face in her knees and weeps over her shattered dream of finally being loved by her parents. The crushing reality finally sets in that every ounce of their supposed affection was nothing more than a calculated ploy for their own selfish benefit. Wiping her tears with newfound resolve, she vows to pack her belongings so she can abandon this toxic house first thing in the morning. She gazes around her completely desolate room, noting the stark reality of a space containing only a few scattered books and the barest minimum of furniture. She reflects bitterly that every single gift she ever received from her parents and her former fiancé had been ruthlessly confiscated by Layla. Approaching the sparse bookshelf, she curiously reaches out and picks up a strange, dark object hidden among the few remaining volumes. Examining the mysterious book in her hands, she tilts her head in confusion and wonders when she ever acquired such an unfamiliar text. Flipping the heavy cover open, she peers intently at the pages to uncover the hidden secrets within. Suddenly, a sinister mirror materializes from the pages, reflecting her terrified face as a dark, oppressive aura violently explodes into the room. Her eyes widen in absolute horror as she instantly recognizes the suffocating presence of a deadly nightmare demon. Without warning, the floor beneath her shatters into a swirling abyss, violently pulling her down into the demon's shadowy realm. As she plunges into the darkness, jagged, thorny curse marks aggressively crawl up her leg to bind her in place. Her vision blurs and her strength fades as the malevolent energy completely paralyzes her body. Panicking, she tries to summon her magic but realizes with mounting dread that her divine power is completely blocked. Desperately trying to access the lingering traces of battle's magic, she gasps as her remaining strength is rapidly siphoned away. Swallowed by the encroaching shadows, she screams out into the void and begs for someone to save her. Emerging from the absolute darkness, the terrifying, corrupted silhouette of Layla silently looms directly behind her paralyzed sister. Glancing over her shoulder with desperate hope, Adia calls out her sister's name and begs for help against the nightmare demon. Instead of offering salvation, Layla stares back with wide, hollow eyes and a deeply twisted, psychotic smile. Standing over her trapped sister, Layla cruelly mocks her helplessness and sadistically asks why she doesn't just use her precious power to escape. The wicked girl sneers that Adia is nothing more than a completely useless saint who only survived before by leeching off Lord Battle's magic. Ignoring the vicious insults, Adia frantically warns her sister that the entity is a lethal nightmare demon and pleads with her to fight it. Cutting off her desperate pleas, Layla flashes a chilling glare and coldly declares that her older sister is entirely mistaken. Basking in the swirling demonic energy, Layla lovingly cradles her crested hand and praises the nightmare demon as a divine god that grants her ultimate power. Flaunting the newly restored crescent moon crest, the corrupted girl gleefully announces that the stolen holy power is fully hers once again. Adia stares in absolute, horrified disbelief as she realizes her own sister intentionally orchestrated the demonic attack to steal back her magic. Looking down with sheer contempt, Layla viciously mocks her broken sister for crawling pathetically on the ground like an insect. With a surge of stolen magic, the wicked younger sister violently stomps her foot, sending a massive shockwave ripping through the dark water. The explosive force violently strikes Adia, throwing her backward with a sharp cry of agonizing pain. Crashing hard against the unyielding surface of the nightmare realm, the battered saint completely collapses. Unleashing a torrent of delusional rage, Layla violently projects her own sins onto Adia, screaming that her older sister ruthlessly seduced Shihab and stole the royal engagement. Overwhelmed by the psychotic, hypocritical accusations, Adia tightly covers her ears and sobs uncontrollably at the barrage of vicious lies. Completely consumed by madness, Layla wildly screams that Adia's existence is the sole reason she was humiliatingly kicked out of the Marquis's estate. The bitter memory of Shihab cowardly abandoning her to avoid the Algar Empire's wrath fuels Layla's blazing, unstoppable hatred. Pointing an accusing finger, the completely unhinged girl aggressively blames her innocent sister for the utter destruction of her perfectly stolen life. Pushed past her breaking point, a weeping Adia weakly fires back that Layla is the one who constantly steals absolutely everything from her. Refusing to surrender her stolen glory, Layla fiercely vows to completely destroy the royal engagement and demands Adia sacrifice her remaining power to replace what was lost. Clenching her glowing fist, the demonic fake saint flashes a terrifying, victorious grin and declares that Adia's sacred power belongs to her for eternity. Completely defenseless against the overwhelming darkness, Adia squeezes her eyes shut and desperately prays for a savior. Using the very last ounce of her fading strength, the terrified girl screams out her beloved prince's name into the suffocating abyss. Flaunting the stolen crescent moon crest, Layla flashes a sinister grin and gleefully declares that her sister's power will belong to her forever. Completely swallowed by the abyssal waters, a drowning Adia desperately pleads for someone to save her. Sinking deeper into the suffocating darkness, she uses her final, fading breath to scream out Prince Battle's name. Suddenly, an explosive shower of shattered glass erupts into the void as Prince Battle violently crashes through the Nightmare Realm's barrier. Adia stares up in absolute, wide-eyed disbelief as a warm flush of relief instantly washes over her face. The towering prince lands with earth-shattering force, sending a massive shockwave of displaced water rippling across the dark domain. Caught completely off guard, Layla freezes in her tracks with absolute terror as the uninvited savior makes his explosive entrance. Drawing his sword with lightning speed, Battle entirely ignores Adia and launches a lethal, high-speed charge directly at the corrupted sister. A terrifying close-up reveals the prince's slitted pupil burning with pure, unadulterated killing intent. Channeling his absolute fury, Battle violently swings his heavy blade in a devastating downward arc. The razor-sharp steel viciously slashes toward the wicked fake saint, threatening to cleave her in two. Layla's mouth drops open in a silent, paralyzed gasp as the deadly execution strike rapidly approaches. Gritting his teeth with merciless resolve, the enraged prince fully commits to annihilating the abuser. Hooking his leg behind hers, Battle brutally sweeps Layla off her feet and violently forces her down into the watery floor. Refusing to let him become a murderer, a desperate Adia screams at the top of her lungs for the prince to stop. The sharp ring of halting steel echoes through the darkness as Battle instantly freezes his blade just inches from its target. With his heavy cape billowing fiercely in the wind, the prince holds his execution strike and casts a lethal glare over his shoulder. Panting heavily, a tearful Adia struggles to catch her breath after expending her remaining energy to halt his attack. Maintaining absolute dominance, Battle violently stomps his boot down to securely pin the thrashing Layla against the Nightmare Realm's floor. His cold, unforgiving eye glares down at the pathetic girl squirming helplessly beneath his heel. Trembling with unadulterated dread, a sweating Layla stares up at the lethal blade resting dangerously close to her throat. Keeping his sword readied, Battle turns back to Adia and demands to know why she is protecting the very person who tortured her. The prince coldly warns his merciful bride that showing compassion to such a wicked entity will not bring her any true salvation. He firmly insists that letting a monster like Layla live will only allow her to continue her cruel cycle of abuse indefinitely. Tears freely streaming down her cheeks, a heartbroken Adia softly whispers that she must spare her regardless of the horrific past. She clutches her chest tightly, silently fighting through the agonizing memories of her family's relentless betrayal. Looking up with profound, unwavering sorrow, the gentle saint declares that she simply cannot let him kill her only sister. She tightly grips her trembling fingers together, desperately praying that her merciful choice will not lead to further tragedy. Frustrated by her enduring kindness, Battle's grip tightens around the hilt of his sword with a sharp creak. Yielding entirely to his bride's desperate wish, the imposing prince sharply turns his back on the terrified Layla. A sudden, agonizing gasp escapes Battle's lips as the lingering nightmare curse violently strikes his deeply exhausted body. The massive prince completely collapses, crashing heavily onto the dark water as a horrified Adia frantically screams his name. Catching his falling body, Adia immediately recognizes the devastating symptoms of his sleeping sickness while a stunned Layla observes the sudden collapse. Recovering her twisted confidence, the shadowy younger sister aggressively demands to know why Adia is trying to abandon her. As Adia desperately cradles the unconscious prince, Layla steps forward and orders her sister to promise she will never leave her again. The wicked girl delivers a chilling ultimatum, promising to spare Prince Battle's life only if Adia completely submits to her demands. Flashing a sickeningly sweet smile, Layla deceitfully offers to forgive her older sister's supposed transgressions if she immediately surrenders. Pushing her completely into a corner, Layla sadistically asks if Adia is truly willing to let her beloved savior die. Adia's eye trembles with profound despair as she fully grasps the devastating, inescapable weight of her sister's cruel hostage situation. Choosing Battle's life over her own freedom, Adia tightly grips the prince's hand as a brilliant burst of holy magic erupts to shield them from the encroaching darkness. Realizing her magic is being forcefully transferred, a panicked Adia desperately urges the prince to use her remaining power. Scoffing at the futile attempt, Layla arrogantly claims that only a high saint can exorcise the demon, but Battle firmly tells Adia not to give up. Staring into the oppressive darkness, Adia gathers her ultimate resolve and boldly declares her true identity. Throwing her hands into the air, the young saint unleashes a blinding shockwave of light and vows she will never give up again. A confident smirk graces Battle's face as the magnificent, purifying light washes away the lingering curse. Back in the physical world, a stunned Layla stammers in absolute disbelief as brilliant rays of holy magic violently erupt from the estate windows. Trembling with pure terror, the fake saint realizes the horrifying truth that her sister is successfully exorcising a high-level nightmare demon. Surrounded by an earth-shattering explosion of divine magic, Adia stands proudly at the center of the magnificent starlight. The undeniable symbol of the true saint fully materializes within her eye, blazing with absolute, sacred authority. Bathed in an ethereal, sparkling glow, Adia finally awakens as the legendary Grand Saint the kingdom hasn't seen in over a century. Completely shattered by the overwhelming display of power, a devastated Layla collapses to her knees and bitterly wonders why she wasn't the chosen one. Looking down at his triumphant bride, Prince Battle offers a breathtakingly warm smile and praises her magnificent achievement. The prince pulls his exhausted savior into a tight, affectionate embrace while a seething Layla bitterly curses the unfairness of her older sister's victory. Reacting instantly to an unannounced intrusion, Battle violently kicks the arrogant father backward to protect his bride. The devastating impact sends the greedy count flying across the room as the mother watches in absolute horror. Crashing hard against the polished floor, the cowardly parents scramble to comprehend the sudden, violent retaliation. Staring up at the towering figure, the terrified father stammers in disbelief as he recognizes the imperial prince. Shielding his bride securely behind his cape, Battle casts a terrifying glare and coldly demands to know why they barged into her private quarters. A sweating Layla stares in sheer terror as Battle reveals that the wicked younger sister dared to physically attack his future wife. Leveling his razor-sharp blade directly at Layla, the prince ruthlessly declares that harming the future princess consort is an unforgivable offense. The cowardly parents let out a pathetic shriek, completely paralyzed by the overwhelming killing intent radiating from the royal. Instantly abandoning all aristocratic dignity, the mother and father violently throw themselves to the floor to beg for their miserable lives. A stunned Layla stares in absolute disbelief as her own parents ruthlessly offer to lock her in the underground dungeon just to save themselves. Trembling with sudden panic, the corrupted girl frantically begs them to reconsider sending her to such a horrific place. Turning on his favorite child without hesitation, the furious count viciously screams at her to shut her mouth. With veins popping from his forehead, the desperate father cruelly brands his golden child as a completely ungrateful liability. He viciously berates the terrified girl, screaming that her foolish arrogance is about to get their entire bloodline executed. Grabbing her violently by the hair, the ruthless father forces Layla's head toward the floor and aggressively orders her to apologize. Tears of profound humiliation stream down Layla's face as she is forcefully shoved into absolute submission. Forced to the ground like a common criminal, the broken fake saint weakly chokes out a desperate, humiliating apology. Stripped of her stolen power and her family's favor, Layla trembles uncontrollably on the cold stone floor. The once arrogant sister remains pinned to the ground, her majestic facade completely shattered by the brutal reality of her failure. Sneering with absolute disgust, Battle notes that the pathetic parents care only about their own survival, perfectly matching Zell's earlier intelligence report. Clutching the prince's sleeve, a deeply disturbed Adia stares up at her savior with wide, sorrowful eyes. Honoring his merciful bride's ultimate wish, the prince coldly declares that he will spare their miserable lives, but absolutely nothing more. The cowardly parents immediately flash sickening smiles of overwhelming relief while Zell glares down at them with pure contempt. Turning their backs on the wretched family forever, Adia softly whispers her profound gratitude as the prince guides her out of the estate. Stepping purposefully toward her new life, the true saint leaves the desolate room without a single ounce of hesitation. Once safely away from her abusers, Battle pulls his exhausted bride into a deeply tender embrace and softly praises her incredible strength. Burying her face in his chest, Adia weeps and apologizes for the trouble, but the prince simply smiles and gently orders her to rest. Blushing deeply, Adia gazes up at Prince Battle as he leans in close, his face illuminated by a gentle, magical glow. Wrapping his heavy cape protectively around her shoulders, the prince casts a serious glance backward and firmly tells her to leave the rest to him. The aristocratic crowd erupts into absolute shock as the news spreads that Adia has officially awakened as the legendary Grand Saintess. As the royal couple walks away, the greedy parents immediately plot to restore Adia's status and spread the joyous news to the entire holy nation. A harsh scream echoes through the dark dungeon as Zell's unseen forces violently lock the gate, revealing that undeniable evidence of Adia's abuse has already been submitted. Stripped of her stolen glory, a defeated Layla sits utterly alone behind the heavy iron bars of the underground prison. Gripping the rusted bars, the furious fake saint desperately demands to be let out of the dark, filthy cell while her parents coldly walk away. Tears welling in her eyes, Layla frantically screams for her mother to save her from the terrifying darkness. Completely turning her back on her former golden child, the mother ruthlessly orders the guards to lock the door tight so Layla never appears before Adia again. Panic fully consuming her, the abandoned girl violently shakes the iron gate and screams for her mother at the top of her lungs. The mother's expression remains utterly cold and unmoved, devoid of a single ounce of maternal affection. Staring blankly at her imprisoned daughter, the cruel matriarch delivers the ultimate betrayal, coldly declaring that giving birth to her was a complete mistake. Layla's trembling hand reaches through the rusted bars in a futile, desperate attempt to grasp the vanishing illusion of her family's love. The massive wooden doors of the dungeon slam completely shut, sealing the disgraced girl in absolute, suffocating darkness. Swallowed by the shadows, a deeply sinister, psychotic smile slowly begins to stretch across Layla's face. Sitting alone in the pitch-black cell, she whispers that this cruel fate serves her right. Her eyes hidden beneath the shadows of her hair, the corrupted girl quietly realizes that her family is finally treating her like a literal monster. Revealing its true nature, the underground dungeon operates as the Chamber of Seals, a highly dangerous vault containing cursed relics from terrifying monsters defeated by past saintesses. Behind a set of heavily chained bars, the massive, imposing paw of a sealed beast rests ominously in the darkness. Huddled near the terrifying cage, Layla correctly deduces that her ruthless parents will likely abandon or kill her to save their own skins. A dark, calculating gleam ignites within her eyes as she contemplates her grim, impending execution. Trembling with a mixture of fear and madness, she presses her hands against her pale cheeks. Staring at her bare hand, she bitterly notes that her stolen saint's crest has completely vanished and the nightmare demon's whispers are entirely gone. Turning her gaze toward the heavily chained vault, a deeply wicked realization begins to form in her mind. Looming silently in the shadows, the terrifying silhouette of a sealed demon waits patiently behind the thick iron bars of the cursed cage. Glancing over her shoulder, the unhinged girl stares directly into the lair of the ancient, sealed evil. The grotesque, menacing face of the demonic beast stares back at her, waiting to be unleashed. A terrifying, jagged grin stretches across the monster's face as it senses her dark, corrupting intentions. Gripping the holy chains with her bare hands, a completely psychotic Layla vows to become the exact monster her family expects her to be. With a violent, unnatural surge of desperate strength, she brutally shatters the magical chains binding the demon's cage. Her mind spirals into a dark flashback, recalling a time when she enviously admired her older sister's breathtaking beauty. The memory perfectly frames Adia standing radiantly in the wind, a vision of absolute, untouchable grace. Smiling with toxic resentment, Layla bitterly complains that it is completely unfair for her older sister to naturally possess everything she desires. Crouching before the now unlocked demonic cage, the utterly corrupted girl whispers a psychotic plea, betting on her sister's endless forgiveness as she unleashes pure evil. Several days after the horrific attack, Adia and Battle stroll peacefully through a breathtaking field of blooming poppies. Gazing down with affectionate concern, Battle gently asks if the beautiful scenery has helped her feel a little better. The dark memory of Layla's violent ambush flashes briefly as he acknowledges the awful ordeal she recently endured. Lowering her gaze to the vibrant flowers, Adia quietly confirms his comforting words with a soft nod. Smiling warmly, she expresses her gratitude that his presence has stabilized her magic while he gently urges her not to overexert herself. Battle informs her that an important message regarding her family's situation has arrived from the holy nation of Mia. Turning to leave, the prince softly instructs her to take her time and rest while he steps out to handle the political matter. Bathed in the warm sunlight, Adia waves a gentle, happy goodbye as her royal protector walks away. A sudden, unnatural gust of wind violently rustles through the field, scattering delicate petals into the sky. A blinding flash completely obscures Adia's vision, causing her to cry out in alarm as her sight is swallowed by an abrupt white void. The ominous crunch of heavy footsteps echoes through the eerie emptiness, rapidly approaching her position. Peering through the blinding haze, she spots a familiar silhouette and innocently asks if Lord Battle forgot something. The shadowy figure of the prince stands silently in the clearing, calling out her name with a chillingly flat tone. Extending a hand from beneath his heavy cape, the figure smoothly claims he came back to pick her up. Clutching her collar nervously, Adia hesitates as a creeping instinct warns her that something is fundamentally wrong. The imposter urges her to come with him while Adia freezes under an intense, suffocating pressure radiating from his body. A terrifying, slit-pupiled demonic eye snaps open, glaring with pure malice from beneath the prince's dark hair. Adia's eye widens in absolute horror as the sheer, terrifying wrongness of the entity fully registers in her mind. Stepping backward in fear, she stammers that something is wrong while the fake Battle tilts his head in feigned confusion. Her body completely paralyzes against her will as the unseen magical force forcefully commands her to step closer. A deeply sinister, psychotic smirk stretches across the fake prince's face as he possessively brands her his saint. The imposter violently grabs her wrist, completely ignoring Adia's desperate screams for him to stop and let her go. Pulling the terrified girl against his chest, the monster fiercely declares that he will never allow her to escape. A violent, shattering disruption tears through the illusion as Adia forcefully struggles to break free from the entity's grasp. Shoving the imposter away, a furious Adia demands to know the true identity of the monster wearing her beloved's face. She fiercely rejects the illusion, screaming that the real Lord Battle would never commit such a violently possessive act. The fake Battle stands motionless in the swirling wind, his disguise slowly beginning to fracture under her unwavering conviction. A chillingly familiar voice echoes from the imposter, mockingly praising her for figuring out the deception so quickly. The illusion shatters to reveal a smiling Layla, prompting a stunned Adia to demand why her wicked sister is suddenly here. Flashing a deeply corrupted smile, Layla smoothly urges her older sister to completely forget about her painful reality. The wicked girl promises to trap Adia in a happy dream forever while the true saint realizes the horrifying implications of the ambush. Remembering the forbidden dungeon, Adia screams in absolute terror upon realizing Layla actually broke the ancient seal on Morpheus, the nightmare-feeding spirit. Wearing the prince's face once again, the corrupted spirit confirms its identity, revealing it was possessed by a dream demon and sealed away long ago. The entity boasts that even a legendary saint could barely seal it, mocking Adia's helplessness as she begs the creature wearing Battle's face to stay away. Trembling uncontrollably, Adia cowers as the psychological torture of hearing her beloved prince's voice from a monster overwhelms her mind. The demonic imposter traps her in a terrifying embrace, sadistically whispering that her scent is incredibly intoxicating. Leaning in with predatory hunger, the monster licks its lips and gleefully notes that she tastes just as delicious as expected. Pressing intimately against her cheek, the fake prince revels in the pure, delicious taste of the saint's raw fear. Driven by an insatiable, demonic appetite, the entity violently demands to consume even more of her terror. Trapped entirely in the monster's suffocating grip, a completely broken Adia weeps and begs for the horrific nightmare to stop. The demonic entity wearing Layla's face cruelly whispers that Adia will simply be thrown away and unloved if she stays in the real world. Reaching out with a sinister invitation, the entity urges the broken girl to come along. It promises to take her far away to a perfect place completely free from all pain. The twisted spirit offers an eternal, blissful sanctuary within a happy dream world. Adia gazes blankly ahead, genuinely wondering if a painless dream world would finally make her family love her. She imagines a perfect reality where her grueling training actually paid off and she became the true saint she was meant to be. In this beautiful illusion, she envisions a crowd of people joyfully blessing her existence. The vision continues, showing her standing proudly as her royal engagement remains completely intact. However, a sudden realization strikes her heart as she notices Lord Battle is entirely absent from this fabricated paradise. Brilliant memories flood her mind, reminding her of the towering prince who saved her over and over again. The warm echo of Battle confessing his long-held desire to see her completely shatters the entity's cold manipulation. A blinding, holy aura suddenly erupts around Adia as she firmly rejects the false paradise. Clasping her hands with absolute resolve, she fiercely declares that she will only live in a world alongside Lord Battle. The demonic entity violently recoils as the radiant light shatters its dark, suffocating illusion. Desperately reaching out, the monster screams for her to wait as the holy energy obliterates its form. A magnificent pillar of divine light violently explodes outward, completely purifying the surrounding darkness. Seizing the opening, the real Prince Battle lunges forward and ruthlessly slashes his heavy blade through the corrupted entity. The nightmare spirit shrieks in sheer, agonizing pain as the lethal strike forcefully dissolves its physical form. Rushing to her side, Battle gently checks on a panting Adia to ensure she is unharmed. Tears of profound relief well up in her eyes as she gazes up at her true, undeniable savior. The protective prince immediately pulls his trembling bride into a secure, desperately tight embrace. Burying his face in her hair, Battle whispers how incredibly relieved he is to find her completely safe. Safe at last, Adia completely breaks down and sobs freely against his broad chest. The scene abruptly shifts to the grand royal court, where the disgraced Sirio's family kneels before the king. Sitting imposingly on his throne, the king formally addresses the severe crimes committed by the Sirio's household. The monarch grimly reveals that Prince Battle has officially threatened the entire nation with the terrifying military might of the Algar Empire. Panic grips the Holy Kingdom as they fully realize the devastating consequences of provoking the imperial prince. Sweating with absolute terror, the cowardly count frantically begs the king and claims the entire situation is just a massive misunderstanding. Dragged forward by royal guards, a completely unhinged Layla violently thrashes and screams in pure panic. Desperately trying to escape her grim fate, she screams her older sister's name at the top of her lungs. Completely lost in her own delusions, Layla wildly demands that her infinitely forgiving sister pardon her horrific crimes. Shutting down her frantic pleas, her father coldly declares he can no longer defend a fool who intentionally broke a forbidden monster's seal. Utterly abandoned by everyone, the psychotic girl stares in sheer disbelief and violently accuses Adia of betraying her. Rising from his throne, the king casts a final, unforgiving glare and officially delivers their absolute judgment. For the unforgivable crime of endangering a royal fiancé, the monarch brutally strips the Sirio's family of their prestigious noble title entirely. The devastating decree echoes through the grand hall, completely destroying the greedy family's carefully stolen legacy. Leaving the ruined kingdom behind, a luxurious royal carriage travels smoothly beneath a brilliantly clear sky. Gazing thoughtfully out the window, Adia reflects on the chaotic aftermath of what should have been a simple, joyous departure. Despite the lingering sorrow of severing her familial ties, a quiet, undeniable strength hardens her beautiful expression. Sitting comfortably across from his new bride, a deeply affectionate Prince Battle watches her with unwavering devotion. Holding a decisive document, the royal official prepares to read the ultimate judgment aloud. The king formally decrees that a disgraced, kneeling Layla is to be immediately banished to a convent. As the royal guards forcibly drag her away, a panicked Layla desperately screams that she is still a saint. Thrashing wildly against her captors, she refuses to accept her grim reality and begs them to stop the banishment. The scene shifts to the imposing, heavily fortified walls of a massive border gate looming under a cloudy sky. Exhausted and panting heavily, a bewildered Layla stares ahead with wide eyes as a terrifying realization dawns on her. Stumbling on the wooden path, she frantically asks her escorts if they just crossed the national border. Realizing the deception, she aggressively screams at them to turn back and demands to know why they aren't heading to the convent. Completely unhinged, she wildly accuses the guards of abandoning her to die in a foreign, lawless land. The escort simply rides away on his horse, entirely ignoring Layla's desperate screams to come back. The cruel, unspoken decree echoes in the air, asserting that the wicked impostor should just die out here alone. Stumbling forward in tears, a sobbing Layla curses and uselessly begs her abandoners to wait. Utterly abandoned and exhausted, the ruined girl slumps heavily against a rough tree trunk in the desolate woods. Standing completely alone in the dark forest, she freezes as terrifying, glowing monster eyes begin to surround her in the shadows. Tears of pure, unadulterated terror stream down her face as the monstrous presence slowly closes in for the kill. Consumed by absolute despair, the disgraced girl screams into the void and pathetically begs her older sister to save her. The scene brightly shifts to a magnificent cathedral, where the king publicly praises Adia for purifying the corrupted great spirit Morpheus. Dressed in a breathtakingly elegant gown, Adia is officially crowned as the legendary great saint of dream-breaking. Stepping down from his throne, the king respectfully places a beautiful, floral crown upon the kneeling savior's head. Adia looks up with a serene, radiant smile, fully embracing her true and rightful destiny. The entire aristocratic crowd erupts into thunderous applause, joyfully celebrating their magnificent new saint. Awestruck nobles excitedly whisper that her incredible purification magic surpasses even the legendary saint from a century ago. The narration proudly reveals that the kingdom officially adopted Adia into the royal family to honor her as a true princess. Following her royal adoption, her grand engagement to Prince Battle is officially and proudly announced to the entire world. Bathed in a shower of falling flower petals, the royal couple walks side by side with radiant, deeply affectionate smiles. Watching from the sidelines, a deeply regretful Shihab gazes at Adia and painfully admits how breathtakingly beautiful she has become. As the cheering crowd showers the couple in joyful blessings, the cowardly knight selfishly laments that Adia once truly loved him. A bitter montage of their innocent past flashes through his mind, showing the sweet, stolen moments they used to share. The painful memory highlights Adia's bright, genuine smile that he foolishly threw away for a manipulative fake. Crushed by his own terrible choices, Shihab agonizingly wonders when his perfectly happy life completely fell apart.